What's up, everyone? Beast Mode back here with another video. So today we're going to talk about the predicted, or I'm going to predict the metagame for RBET coming up this Saturday. It's the Really Big Edison Tournament. It's the first one of the new season. We are going to try to predict, or I'm going to try to predict what I think will be in the top cut or what will be very popular. That way you can kind of gear your sideboard for certain matchups and or deck, which is something I try to do before every event. We always make changes to the sideboard and or deck based on tough matchups that might be popular. And it's really key if you talk to some of the old school players, they would definitely prepare themselves before an event and would try to counter specific decks, or they made the deck in a specific way that they knew they could win the event, and then their deck would now be the top tier meta deck. So a lot of old school players really took a lot of pride in trying to predict the metagame, and because it puts you at that much of an advantage if you can accurately predict it and stay ahead of the curve. So of course I made a prediction video before the Deck Devastators tournament. I was actually pretty accurate in some of the things I said there, the fairies being the rogue deck, and ended up winning the whole event. So you can check out that video if you care, but obviously the tournament's already passed. But so here we're going to try to pick some of the decks that I think will be popular. I'm not guaranteeing anything here. It's a matter of opinion, so feel free to disagree and you can make a comment. And just because the deck is here doesn't necessarily mean that I think it's going to top. I just think it may be popular. So without further ado, let's get into this dragon deck here. I'm not even sure how good this deck really is. Excuse me. If you ask certain people, they will tell you it's out of this world, and other people just don't believe it's real. I know one player ended up getting second place with it. It seems pretty good. I think Keegan's played it a lot on his channel. He definitely believes it's a great deck. I've never played against it. I can't say. I don't know if it'll top, but I do think it'll be played. If anything, I think one probably tops, because I think there's going to be more side deck hate for it. Not that it's the easiest to sideboard for, right? You pretty much have to have Electric Virus, I believe, in the sideboard for it. But it's very reliant on Future Fusion. If you hit that card, you can pretty much win every game. Another problem here is the DD Warrior Lady. If that hits the graveyard, it kind of shuts off the Totem Dragon. So you have to be very cautious playing that card. And I'm not sure if every player is going to be diligent with the DD Warrior Lady, because if that hits the graveyard, it's going to be definitely slows the deck down a little bit. So I do think this deck is going to be played. I do think that you'll see it. How many players? Hard to say it. I think it's going to be more than one or two like it normally was. If somebody's really good on it, drawing well, I think that you can probably see him top. So I would just be conscious of this. I'm not sure what will be the best side deck choice for it. I really haven't sat down and really thought about it aside from Electric Virus, but this is going to be relevant. I would be mindful of it. And, you're probably going to see it, especially if you're doing well. I would think the first few rounds, you'll probably run into one of these. So that's that deck there. This is Frogs here. This deck I feel is going to be very prevalent. I've been playing a lot of DB randoms, and Frogs, it's like every other match. I don't know why it's gained so much popularity all of a sudden, but it's here. And there was an incident before where everybody expected Frogs to be like the #1 deck at one of the RBETs, and then it didn't show up at all. So that could be one of these issues here. But I have a feeling that this deck is going to be highly represented, and I think that you need to have stuff on the sideboard for it. It's, again, there are different levels of Frog players. There's some Frog players that play out of this world, and they're unbelievable with the deck, and then there's others that just pick up the deck because fundamentally the deck is not overly complicated, right? Anybody can end on a Duplock with a Substitute and slam a Monarch every turn, and that's very basic. And I'm not trying to diminish what the deck can do, because at a high level, with some Rognock, for example, I've seen him do lines with Substitute, and he does crazy plays with it. But the deck is not overly complicated, but you can see the difference in a great Frog player and an average Frog player. So, but fundamentally, the deck itself is not overly complicated. Which opens the door for anybody to really pick up the deck and have some level of success with it, because of the fact that the deck plays a lot of good cards. Substitute is one of the best cards of the format. Really, it's probably too good. In the cards, I think banned in current Yu-Gi-Oh, so that tells you something. And in this format, you can play 3 of them. So fundamentally, the deck is just strong, and it allows you to play a Monarch every turn with relative ease. Excuse me. Duplock is not overly complicated process to duplock somebody, which stops all attacks. and Battle Faders as well stops OTK. So it does hurt a lot of decks here, and also a main deck's Threatening Roar. So, and then the sideboard is brutal too with triple Vanity Fiend. So again, I think the deck is going to be played by a lot of players just because of the fact that you don't have to be amazing to sit down and play the deck. And again, I'm not trying to diminish the deck. I said that there are definitely, you can watch the difference in skill, but this opens the door for players to, a lot of players don't want to just walk in and try to play fairies because the deck is too difficult. But players can pick this deck up and do basic combos with the deck and still have success. So that's all I'm saying, and I do think that you need to be prepared for it. So I would expect to see at least one, maybe two frogs in top cut. Fairies here. This is the Carpath build. This deck, I believe, is going to be everywhere because I think it's good. And from what I know, I've seen some videos from the Vegas Shonen Jump where the side events, the Edison side events, and people were winning events with this deck. Is it better than regular fairy? I have no idea. I've played straight fairies like once, and didn't really put much thought into it. But I think that it could be because of the fact that it has some resiliency to like Light and Mirror because of the Caius and the Dark Monsters. So you just can't, and of course Decree, you can't just slam 3 Light Mirror in your deck and expect to beat it because they flip one Royal Decree on you that'll negate it, or they slam a Caius. So I think this deck is a little bit more resilient than regular fairies. I don't really have to think. I know it's more resilient just the way the cards it plays. And it has a similar concept, right? The whole idea is to draw up Christia, and it does that pretty well. I played Carpath, and Christia hit the board every game we played. So I do expect people to play this deck. I don't know if this deck requires a higher level of skill than straight fairies, just because I know regular fairies, you have to really make the right line all the time to really set up the graveyard for the Christia play. It's very unforgiving. This deck here, you might be able to play a little bit more loose and still have some success. So I would expect to see maybe one fairies in top cut. I just think that there's going to be a lot of them. So you definitely have to have some stuff on the sideboard for it. But again, I caution you because of the fact that Light Mirror may not be the answer here with the way this deck is constructed. And against Carpath, I'll be honest, I didn't side deck them in at all because I knew he played Royal Decree. And, you might be able to negate 1 or 2 cards with a Light Mirror, but once a Royal Decree flips on the board, it's dead. And, of course, he plays Triple Kaya, so I just didn't bother side decking him at all. I don't know if it's good or bad. We split matches. I won 1, he won 1, so hard to say. But so I would definitely have fairies on the radar, and if your deck can't beat fairies, Blackwing essentially has a really hard matchup. Maybe you decide to play something else, but that's got to be your call. So let's see the next deck here. This deck here, Machina. This deck I do think is a real deck. I played a lot of it online lately. I think this is a better version of Quick Draw, essentially, is how I feel. It looks, I haven't actually played it, but just playing against it, it feels like Quick Draw almost, the way it plays with Raikos and the hamsters, and everything's a plus. It has the gear frames, and it searches the fortress. It's just very resilient, and then the Pot of Avarice comes down. It's hard to outgrind this deck because of the fact that it plays Pot of Avarice, and it just keeps slamming the big machine monsters on the board, and it's pretty resilient. Now, it even has a sideboard card that can stop your hate, which is the Zombie World, just to try to stop the Cyber Dragon contact play. So it's definitely something I would be aware of. I do think that this deck is going to probably be the most popular deck there in terms of, I don't think it's going to, I shouldn't say the most popular deck, but in terms of the recent topping decks, I do think this will be the number one played deck of them. It's good. And again, this is not an overly complicated deck to play. So it's favorable for players that are just entering the tournament, and it's good. I think it's good. And sideboard hate definitely can compete with frogs because it has double Dyna and then main deck's one here, so that's pretty good. Triple D Prison seems to be just about everywhere now. But yeah, I do think that this deck is good. DD Warrior Lady is in every deck too. If we just saw the last few decks I reviewed here, they've had DD Warrior Lady, so be prepared for Machinas. I don't know if Cyber Dragons are going to be the answer unless you're playing zombies, because they can't side deck Zombie World against you. It's just not a good idea. Because now you can, Book of Life Agors. I don't know or Book of Life Caius. So I don't think that if they would side deck Zombie World against you if you're playing zombies, but I don't think zombies are in the best position right now anyway. So we'll get on to the next deck. This deck I would definitely be prepared for. Last deck here. This is like the bonus deck. I always like to do a little bonus deck. I think Gladiator Beasts are not good. I don't think they're a great deck at all. They're not my favorite deck to play against. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. But I do think they're positioned well right now. And the reason why I think that is because of frogs. Now, I don't even think it's a guaranteed win against frogs because of the fact that you have to be able to out the dupe block to do anything. But this deck, now, not this specific build here. This is just one I've had saved. But the deck itself plays triple Book of Moon, usually plays some level of Smashing Ground. You can War Chariot the Monarchs. If they don't have a dupe block and just have a substitute on the board, you get free tag outs with all the Gladiator Beast. The Red TRA can just keep looping and remove all the frogs. So if Monarchs were to have, or Frog Monarchs were to have a weakness, it would be Gladiator Beast, most people would say. So do I think that this deck could win? No, I don't think this deck would really win. Do I think that this deck could top if it runs into enough frogs? I do. I think that could happen. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to top, but I do think that as long as frogs are relevant, Gladiator Beast can be relevant. So that's pretty much what I'm saying here. In terms of decks that I think will top, we can just summarize really quick. I do think Machina deck can top. I think it's going to be played in numbers, so that'll also help. I do think the Frog Monarch deck, you're going to see a few of them in the top cut. I'd be very surprised if they didn't. The Dragon deck, I'm not sure how good that deck truly is right now. I think that if you have someone piloting the deck appropriately, that you could definitely see it make or sneak into the top cut. I do think Black Wings. Did I even cover a Black Wing deck? Let's see. Yeah, Black Wings here. I do think that this deck will top. It's the best deck of the format, in my opinion. It's good against just about everything. It's resilient. It can beat just about everything, especially if you have the right side deck. So Black Wing, I would definitely expect to top. I'm not a huge fan of Value right now. I don't know where that deck really sits. I'm not even sure it's still considered S tier at this point. I think it's kind of dropped down a little bit. Same thing with Zombies. I think Zombies is great. I think Zombies is probably at the end of S tier, maybe moving down to A tier, just because of a lot of the hate. I feel like frogs create a little bit of an issue for it. There's a lot of sideboard hate with deck devastation virus, just blows the deck out. Other decks as well. Royal Oppression is always it keeps the deck in check. So I would expect a zombie deck to top if the right player is playing it. Silchus, maybe myself, that's possible. But I will tell you, Deck Devastators had 17 zombie decks out of 130, 40 players. And I was the only one that made the top cut. So, and there was frogs everywhere. Everyone I didn't play any frogs. So that's probably the reason why I was able to do as well as I did. So frogs can be difficult for it. And I'm not sure how good the matchup is against the Machina deck, to be honest with you, as a zombie player, because Raiko's hamsters are always a problem. This deck also plays, depending on the version, has Caius. DD Warrior Lady is another problem with Pyramid Turtles and Goblin Zombies. So there's just a lot of hate out there. And then they're going to sideboard in Triple D Prison. So I don't know if it's the greatest matchup. Zombies head into this. And then you have Fairies. I can tell you we split games with Carpath, and it was not easy at all. Christia completely shuts you down. And of course you have Herald to stop play, so I would say it's probably not the most favorable matchup against this either. So just going over the decks that I've looked at, Gladiator Beast, forget about it. You can't beat Gladiator Beast. It doesn't happen. If they draw somewhat well as zombies, they just pick apart your recruiters and then they banish everything with Red Tiara, so you're not beating them. So I think that just about summarizes the fact that out of the decks I've discussed, I don't think that zombies have the greatest matchup against really any of them. But and of course you can still beat them. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but do you want to play a deck that you have a 25% win rate against a specific deck that you think is going to be popular at a tournament? It has to be a choice that you make, and you have to, if you're very confident, then sure. But anyway, that's my metagame prediction for the RBET tournament coming up on Saturday. Feel free to comment what you guys think. I think all of these decks here are great. And, obviously Glad's are not my favorite, but that's just my feeling, and Frogs are not my favorite either, but definitely more Frog players coming up. So I plan on streaming Friday night at some point, hopefully around 8:30ish or so. Just going to have a good stream. We're not doing the tournament this week because of RBET on Saturday, so we will resume the Beast Mode Circuit series on the following Friday, which will run at 8 p.m. It's 16-person elimination tournament, single elimination. And first 16 players that sign up, it's free. We don't charge anything. The winner gets a role/title in the Discord server, my Discord server that is posted in the description. So if you're not there, please join that. All you have to do is be a subscriber to join, which, is one click. And the winners will be invited to an end of the year kind of championship tournament, and we will see if we can have some prizes for that. But that's it for today. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.